Are we all set?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Dr. Shivam, you can proceed now. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I heartily welcome you all. I, Dr. Shivam Bharadwaj, COO and Co-Director of Cynodent India. I'm the host for today's webinar, along with the Vishal Kamrani, Maharashtra State Head of Cynodent. I would like to thank the founder and CEO of Cynodent, Dr. Anmol Bagaria, and team Cynodent for organizing this webinar. First of all, I would like to introduce what Cynodent is. Cynodent is a unique platform, first time in India, a digital healthcare platform which enables you and a scheduling system and to take your appointment with your ease. Apart from it, our goal is to create a easy access to healthcare services and communication, ways for appointment, not only between dentists and patients, but also for medical practitioners, pharmaceutical services, radiological services, and also research and educational programs for doctors. It's our way to enhance their knowledge and keep them updated regarding the same. Sanodent bring together at economic prices and minimum waiting time because everyone has 24 hours and everyone want to utilize it as much as they can. Sanodent is a way to create precious and healthy smile on our patient faces with the minimum effort and maximum welfare. Sardent is an initiative that will put up all its efforts to create that beautiful smile on our patient face always. Now patients don't have the fear for the long queues and have to wait for the dentist when they have a toothache. So it's a great initiative. Now, so I'm very glad to have you all here and hope you are excited for today's webinar. So let me introduce the today's topic. Photography can help you and encourage and educate your patients and to motivate towards your treatment goals. Using images cannot only help the dentist and make the right diagnosis, but it is easier to explain the patients what they have an image to understand their diagnosis. So today, for this exciting webinar, we have an excellent speaker, Dr. Ashutosh Singh. He had a gratifying association with the Sardar Patel Institute of Dental and Medical Sciences, lecturer in OMR. He also holds the esteemed position of the Director ESD Dental Academy, a dentist by profession, musician by passion, and photographer at heart. Dr. founded Blue Brigade, following music and at the same time pursuing dentistry. Doctor also followed his heart's calling for photography and biking. His constant pursuits and successes have led to the tie-ups and with various national and international level brands and labels and artists. He have also had the honor of judging lots of competitions of various national and international levels. I'm very glad to have you, sir, today. And over to you now, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you. Thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Cynodent. Thank you, Dr. Anmol. Thanks to all the team. Cynodent, thank you for having me here. It's a really lovely platform to be on. You guys are doing absolutely great job, like you described about Cynodent. So let's start, I think.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
So what is the kind of audio that we have? Okay. So let's wait for some time so that people will join in. How many participants do we have exactly? Okay. So very warm welcome to all the participants, to all the Cynodent members. Dr. Anmol, thank you once again for having me here. Today's topic is dental photography. So dental photography is like it's been there in foreign countries for since the 19th century, early 19th century. Unfortunately, in India, it was still not a very during practice, or I mean, it's still not there in colleges, etc. But slowly and steadily, dental photography is picking up. I believe dental photography is a very essential part of modern dentistry, since all of us are heading towards more of aesthetic dentistry. I mean, definitely that conventional dentistry is still there, but along with that conventional dentistry, the kind of enhancements that have been in aesthetic part also, it's really amazing. I believe the way dentistry has evolved during last probably 10 or 15 years, I don't think any other medical field has evolved that much. And I believe dental photography is a very essential part as far as documentation is concerned. Whether it's during the college documentation is concerned, or even our own practice. Uh, whenever I started documenting a case, I found a huge change in the result. And whatever case I documented and the cases that were non-documented, there was a vast difference just because the pre-op conditions were there. I could see them, I could measure them, I could do everything. And hence there was a parameter already said, a benchmark already said, so that this is there and here is where I want to go, or this is where I have to go. Because earlier, when I was practicing without incorporating dental photography in my clinic, or when I was teaching also, so it was like I used to tell the patients, this is, we are going to do orthodontia and your teeth will be absolutely aligned. Or probably we are going to do some aesthetic treatment, we are going to do some composite fillings, or probably we are going to do veneers or whatever. And there'll be a drastic change in your smile, or there'll be a drastic change in your personality. But that was just a verbal part. I mean, the patient used to come to us uh, with the problem. We used to discuss the problem. We used to find a solution. We used to give a solution also. But the entire communication was entirely verbal. So whatever we communicated to the patient, there was a different story that was building up in a patient's mind. And we had a completely different picture. Maybe it used to match sometimes a little bit, maybe it used to match a little more sometimes. But somewhere or the other, the picture that was there built up in the patient's mind and the picture that was there in our mind, it was never coordinated, or it was never 100% on the same platform. So when I started incorporating photography, dental photography in my practice or in my clinic, that was the time when I could click the pre-op photograph and I could clearly educate the patient, this is what the condition is. And then with various other simulation software, we could put the photographs in there and bring about the changes. So even before starting the treatment, now the treatments are completely predictable. So we are completely heading towards digital dentistry. And I believe dental photography is a very integral part, very, very integral part of today's modern dentistry. So probably I'll start with the presentation. And one thing I would like to tell all the participants, this lecture is not going to be the jargon of details of dental photography. What I would like to speak about, or what I would like to convey, is dental photography in a very easy, normal way. इसका हमको हवा नहीं बनाना है, इसका हमको डराना नहीं है किसी को कि नहीं साहब डेंटल फोटोग्राफी हम नहीं कर सकते. So any and everyone can do it. There's a very big misconception or mental blockage that we have is the amount of time that we are going to spend on photography or on recording a case. We can see probably another couple of more patients. So, but believe you me, in the long run, documentation pays a lot. It definitely pays a lot. It has been paying me. It has been paying a lot of other people who are doing, who have already incorporated in their practice. Then they are doing great guns. So it's definitely very helpful. And I'll try and make sure the bouncers na jaye in photography पे. So we'll speak about a very common the thing. आराम से चीजें कैसे हम कर सकते हैं. That's it. So let's start with the presentation.
Sure, sir.
Give me a second. Just give me a second. My laptop is giving some problems. Okay. So here we are. All right. So I hope you guys can see me. I hope you guys can listen to whatever I'm saying. If yes, so any one of you can just say yes. So
Yes,
once
sir,
again,
you're audible. Yes, sir.
once again, thank you so very much. Okay. Greetings once again to any and everyone whosoever has joined in. Very good evening. I would start my lecture by firstly thanking my family. There's my little family which is there. It's me, my lovely wife, and my lovely beloved daughter. And this photograph is very close to me. Why? Because मेरे को ये शाहरुख खान का feeling देती है. I with BDLJ and all those movies, सरसों के खेत में हे वाला, that kind of a feeling, and that was the kind of pose that I was wanting to give also. And like I said, I would especially like to thank my family in the very beginning because I have such a supportive wife and I have such a lovely daughter. Whatever I do, they are the pillar of my strength. In fact, my daughter has also started photography. She's also doing photography. Around a month back, she won the first prize in UN competition. That was something regarding COVID. So she's just trying to get into photography also. What is exactly photography? So let's first get to know what exactly photography is all about. Photography is nothing but whatever we write with the help of light. The images what we see through the sight and then transmitted to the brain help us feel a thing, thereby making reflections about the picture. So whatever the light falls in our eyes, those things are transmitted to our brain, and that is how our brain interprets a photograph. And the word photography is taken from Greek word photos and light. And like I was saying, dental photography started way back in early 19th century. It was 1840, at 1804 rather, the dental photography started. So let's not stay into all these things. So straight away, I'd like to jump upon what is the reason that we should use dental photography for. So firstly, documentation. Secondly, presentation. Documentation, we'll come to it, that why is documentation so important. So firstly, the digital era and the primitive era. Earlier time was in around 1984 or 85. I traveled to Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, all those countries. And 84, 85, that was the first. From there, I bought my first camera, which was a Kodak point and shoot camera. And these are the rolls that we were using at that point of time. There were 32 or 36 exposures. So before clicking one single photograph, I used to think at least 10 times because then developing those roles and then getting them printed and then getting those final results. What if the composition was not right? What if the pictures were blurry? So I had to think n number of times before shooting one shot, before taking one shot. But now, since everything is digitized, we are using memory cards and all those stuff. So, I mean, I'm into birding and I'm into wildlife also. So, in birding and wildlife, I'm shooting on continuous exposure. So, multiple exposure at one point in time, I'm taking around 13 or 14 frames per second. So once I come back from a particular safari or a particular birding thing, I have around 400, 500 odd pictures. And I don't have to worry because I don't have to develop those roles and there are no more 32 or 36 exposures. Now, what the 8 GB cards and all those stuff. So memory is like, this has really changed the way the dental photography or the modern photography has changed. So, firstly, diagnosis and treatment. We require dental photography firstly for diagnosis and treatment planning. Like I had started my conversation with that before I was before I incorporated photography in my clinic or in my practice, everything was verbal. So even the planning wasn't absolutely precise because there wasn't anything concrete excepting the cast of the patient. So there was no visible, and probably what the best I could ask for or we could ask for was a photograph of the patient. But then that photograph could have been 10 years old, or probably 20 years old, or probably anything. So the exact dimensions or the recent photographs or the recent pictures, it was really difficult to get. But since I incorporated photography, these things are like I do it immediately. So all the dimensions, all the every each and every single smallest of the details are there in front of me, and that gives a very clear picture even to the patient. So whatever I communicate to the patient, it is there in the form of a picture. And it's a very old saying that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So one single picture can speak 1,000 words. So I don't have to keep on blabbering to me, ye hai, and this is what has happened, and this is what we are going to do. So it's simple that I just have to show you, okay, this is what is there. And the patient can also see right in front. So diagnosis and treatment, these are the views that are required for documentation. We'll not get into them because 1 hour is a very little time to get into exact details of everything. Enhanced patient education and communication, I've already talked about it. So legal documentation. Legal documentation is something which is in coming times, it's going to be really important because in foreign countries, already the patients or the customers are so, I mean, they're so educated, they're so, and foreign countries also have a system of suing. कुछ भी होता है तो the patient says, I'm going to sue you. And I have a couple of trials with me. There were a few dentist friends who had sent this, posted this on social media also, but they were facing these kind of problems now in India also. So slowly and steadily, the amount of jargon, the amount of information that is there with in hands of everyone is getting to know about going to the consumer forum and all those things. And if I don't have any documentation, I don't have any case. If a patient goes to a consumer forum or if a patient has any complaint or anything happens, I don't have any proof to support my stand. So this way, legal documentation in coming time, and especially now, again, I would like to add that in foreign countries, they also have this thing, dental insurance, which was no longer there in India, but slowly and steadily even in India, this thing is coming up, dental insurance. So even for dental insurance and stuff, we have to have those documents because otherwise we cannot approve whatever the treatment that we have done, whatever the pre-op conditions were, whatever the mid-op treatment was, and whatever the post-op condition is. So for all those things, we have to have those documents. documentation. Laboratory communication is again a very big problem that I used to face. I mean, I used to send some shade. I am having some shade guide, and my lab person is having some other shade guide, and I'm sending the shade of the processes according to my shade guide, and the lab guy is making the processes according to the shade guide that they have. So whatever the processing used to come back to me, I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible. Everything. There was like, so many problems. So with dental photography, the communication with the lab has also enhanced a lot. Whatever the kind of undercuts that I want, whatever the kind of abutment is there, whatever kind of shade, whatever exact shade that I require. So I just document it, make a file, and just either WhatsApp them or mail them. So they while making the processes or doing our job, even they have everything in front of them, because what happens is I've seen the patient and I'm working on a patient, I've seen a patient. So I know what exactly the processes should be like. But ultimately, it's the laboratory which is fabricating everything. So the laboratory doesn't see the patient, they don't see whatever the conditions are. So we have to communicate with them that this is what is there and this is what is required in a very clear-cut direction. That is the only way we can get good results from back from the laboratory. I mean, we start blaming the laboratories like anything. अरे शेड में अच्छा देते हैं, अरे काम में अच्छा करते हैं, डिफरेंस बहुत आते हैं, ये बहुत आता है, वो बहुत आता है. But then somewhere or the other down the line, even we are at fault because, like I said, the laboratory also doesn't have the clear picture of what exactly do we want. So communication with the laboratory is very, very important, and dental photography improves it everything. The next would be like I was telling you, Abhi, I had got there were a few dentist friends who had posted on social media about legal cases which had been filed against them, or the patients were going to file some complaints against them. And since they didn't have any solid documentation, they didn't have any photographs. They just had the prescriptions or whatever they had, and with that they couldn't prove anything. So a few of the comments were also there. If you would have documented, I mean, on the right hand side, if you can see the mid comment documentation. So quite a few people suggested in the comment section that documentation is very important. So again, the same slide. So professional marketing, these days social media marketing has become an integral part of any and everything. So as dentists, all of us love to post good cases, and if we cannot click good photographs of them, we can't just go ahead and post them. So they don't look good, they don't look attractive, and you don't get good details with any and every technique that you click with. So you have to have that proper knowledge of how to click your cases also. Professional instructions, self-education, and improvement. This is one thing which I had started my talk with, that before using dental photography, what kind of practice that I was doing. And right now, it's completely changed. So for self-improvement, for me, it's very, very important and very, very integral part of my practice. Mobile dental photography, okay, fine, let's just skip for this, because this is all how to go about it. We'll talk about how in both the DSLRs as well as mobile, because these days mobiles are so handy, and everyone has a mobile in their pocket. And selfie mania is like really on the peak, and it's pretty easy to use also. So we'll talk about when we get to the point of speaking about how to click these photographs. So, but then here's a slide which shows a slight difference between what you click with your mobile and what is the difference between the picture that you click with your DSLR. So in the mobile, the cameras are, I mean, although they claim to be 45 megapixels and God knows what all. And these days, the mobile cameras are so advanced that they give you the manual feature also. You have the control over shutter speed, you have the control over ISO, you have the control over aperture also. But honestly speaking, the length, the focal length of the cameras being used in the mobile, focal length is very, very low because the mobile camera is meant to capture the landscapes in altogether. That's why the focal length is low. And when we click photographs with the mobile camera, there's a slight distortion. You can see the slide in the lower section. If you don't get the arch, the complete arch in the form of an arch, so the pictures start getting distorted. Uh, a very good example of mobile pictures getting distorted is when we click a group selfie. The person who's clicking the selfie is closest to the camera, and that is the person जिसका photograph सबसे खराब आता है because being closest to the camera, the picture gets absolutely his or her photograph gets absolutely widened because of the low focal length, because of the wide angle of the camera lens which are present in the mobile. So this is the difference between the mobile flick and the DSLR flick. So how does the camera work? I believe most of us who are using a DSLR know about how a camera works. We have a lens. In the lens, we have an aperture. We have a viewfinder through which we look at the subject. Then we have the sensor where the image is captured. And there's the shutter just in front of the sensor. The shutter is moved up, and that is when the light falls upon the sensor, and that is how the picture is exposed to the sensor, and that is how the picture is captured. So the camera that combines with a DSLR, a camera that combines the optics and the mechanism of a single lens reflex camera. Single lens reflex camera are the ones which we were using earlier, films के साथ, and उसी को जब हम लोगों ने digitize कर दिया, so that becomes a digital single lens reflex camera. So the imaging sensor, instead of the films, now we are using the sensor. So that is what the digital photography means. So, and nowadays, nearly all the companies have come up with mirrorless cameras. So there's just a minor difference between the mirrorless and the DSLR, normal DSLR. That is the mirrorless doesn't have a mirror through which we see the image. What happens is when we, in the next slide, we are going to cover this also. Here's the slide in which we talk about the difference between the mirrorless and the mirrored cameras. So in the normal DSLR, the picture, what we see through the eyepiece is reflected through a mirror which is present in front of the sensor. In mirrorless, whatever we see through the eyepiece is exactly what is there in front of the lens. So that is the real-time picture that we see in the mirrorless. So this is the difference between. Let's know about your DSLR. This is a big topic. To get into all the details that we like. So this slide is of a very great importance to all the photographers, leave alone the dental photographers, because this is in the slide we talk about the lenses, and lens is the most integral part of any and every photography. And Abhi, I was speaking about the mobile camera lenses. So if you look towards the right side of the image, that is where we start with the wide angle lenses. So wide angle lenses cover when we are shooting landscapes, we are shooting a picture. So that is where the wide angle comes in. And there are various numbers. People must have heard about lenses that I'm using. N number of lenses, X number of lenses, Y number of lenses. So those number of lenses denote the kind of lens which is there. So anything below 50 mm lens is a wide angle lens, which we basically use for landscapes and stuff. 50 to 100 is for portraits and all those stuff. Beyond 100, it becomes a telephoto, which we use for wildlife, which we use for birding, which we use for sports. So basically, telephoto is when you want to get दूर की चीजें पास. So this picture gives you कि जैसे जैसे हम numbers हमारे बढ़ते जा रहे हैं lens के, it starts with the minimal number and it goes up. So as it is going up, what happens is the focus is getting converged, right? So that is what I meant was कि जब बड़ी picture हम खींच रहे हैं, when we are taking landscapes, we use a lower number of lens. So, and that is the kind of lens that we have in the mobile, right? So that is why we get a little distorted picture. What is exposure? Now, it's basically here's where what we start, where exactly we start about how to go about taking a photograph. So exposure is something which is uh, the base of any photograph, the right exposure. So exposure is nothing but the amount of light which enters the camera, which enters the sensor. अगर इसको हम कॉमन भाषा में बात करें, सो कई फोटोग्राफ हम लोग देखते हैं ये बहुत ब्राइट है, या बहुत सी फोटोग्राफ देखते हैं कि बहुत डार्क है. So bright and dark are the two aspects of exposure that in technical terms we say that this is overexposed. जो बहुत ज़्यादा bright होती हैं वो overexposed है, and जो dark हैं वो underexposed. So right exposure की picture बहुत जरूरी होती है. So this is what we mean by exposure, and three camera settings which come to exposure triangle are responsible for the exposure. This is the exposure triangle that we have. We have a shutter, we have an aperture, and we have the ISO. So shutter is nothing but किस स्पीड से एक शटर हमारा खुल रहा है और बंद हो रहा है. We have an opening, and how fast that opening is opening up and how fast it is closing. So the amount of light when the hole is opening for a longer period of time, the amount of light that is entering the sensor is greater. So that is how the pictures are overexposed. And aperture is कितना बड़ा होल है हमारे लेंस के अंदर. So aperture जितना बड़ा होता है उतना बड़ा अपर्चर होगा, उतनी ज्यादा लाइट जा रही है. जितना छोटा अपर्चर होता जाएगा उतनी कम लाइट जाएगी. तो बड़ा अपर्चर है, ज्यादा लाइट जा रही है, तो पिक्चर इज गोइंग टू बी ओवर एक्सपोज. छोटा होल है इन द लेंस and some light aa rahi hai, so the pictures are going to be underexposed. And ISO is something which we used to have. ISO is nothing. वो हम लोग हर चीज में यूज करते हैं ISO. ISO certification, ISO this, ISO that. So ISO here also means the same thing. The only difference here is that earlier we used to have two types of ISO films. So वो उसमें grains का difference होता था. So higher ISO used to the films used to be for मतलब रात की फोटोग्राफी के लिए या लो लाइट फोटोग्राफी के लिए used to use higher ISO films, and उस film को क्योंकि replace किया है, so now the in the sensors we have those ISO settings, so we can change the ISO settings. Earlier we just had two types of ISOs, but now we have I mean, especially after the entry of mirrorless cameras, अब ISO का range भी बहुत बहुत बढ़ गया है. So we can really click amazing photographs even in absolute dark light. So ठीक है, this is again a very big jargon, so let's not get into it. मोटा मोटी में समझते हैं. Lens opening, like I told you, कितना बड़ा hole है lens में opening का, that is known as aperture. Shutter speed is कि कितनी तेजी से शटर खुल रहा है, कितनी तेजी से बंद हो रहा है, and film speed is the ISO that I talked about. Larger the opening, the greater amount of light that reaches the film. Like I told you, the larger the opening of the lens, the more amount of light, and the size of opening. Now here comes the technical term of f-stop that we use, or the aperture that we use in photography is f-stop. And f-stop is nothing but the size of opening of the lens hole. And here are the different f-stops. So f22 is the least light. So the diagram is self-indicative in itself. f22, ये यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा tricky है चीजें. As the f number rises high, the hole becomes smaller, as you can see. F22 in the slide, you can see that the hole is the smallest, and f1.4, which is the least number, in that the hole is the largest. So if we have f1.4 setting, the picture would be highly exposed. And if we have a f22, the picture will be on the darker side. So this is how the aperture works. And one more thing which is very, very important, especially for us dentists, is aperture related, is the depth of field. Depth of field is completely in coordination with the f-stop. The lower the f-stop means the higher the opening. Like we had seen in the earlier slide, that f1.4 means the opening is the largest. And higher the f-stop, the lower the hole is. So the higher, the lower the f-stop is there, we get less depth of field, as you can see in the photograph. So when we are taking a photograph on f2.8, so you see that the tree behind the subject is there in the middle, and the tree behind this subject, or even the rabbit which is there in front of the cat, which is there in front of our subject, both are blurred. And then we raise the aperture a little bit, we go up to f5.6. Then we have the rabbit and the subject in focus. The rabbit comes in focus along with the subject, but then still the tree behind is still out of focus. But when we raise the f-stop a little more higher, and we go up to f11, so we have all the three things completely in focus. Now, how is this f-stop related to dental photography? When we are clicking intraoral pictures, because we have to click all the 32, right? So we have to have the coverage right from the central incisor to the last molars. So we have to have that depth of field so that we can get all the teeth in focus, right from the central incisors to the last molar. So right from the rabbit to the tree, we have to have everything in focus. That is why f-stop, high f-stop is so very important for us dentists. F-stop is one thing which is really important for us. Again, the depth of field, like we had talked about in the earlier slide, the depth of field is there. Depth of field here is again explained in a photograph. So lower the f-stop, when the f-stop is f1.4, the aperture is the highest. You can see the flower is there in focus, but everything behind the flower is completely blurred. So when we go up to f8, when we go up to f8, we have the flower in focus and a little bit depth, which is there, a little bit more focus is there in the depth also. When we go up to f15, the background with grass, even that becomes clearer. So this is what I meant, was that when we are clicking, we have to click right from the incisors to the molars. So for us, higher f number is very, very important. Shutter speed, I talked about it earlier also. Shutter speed is denoted by 1/, various numbers, and then finally, as you can see the slide, it's starting from 1/125, 1/50, 1/30. So the very first denomination, which is 1/125, is on this speed, the shutter opens and shuts at 1/25 part of a second. Then 1 to the 60th part of the second, then 1 to the 30th part of the second. And slowly the shutter speed is decreasing. Finally, as we move towards the right, then we have 1 second exposure, then we have 2 second exposure, then we have 4 second exposure. So this is what we mean by the shutter speed, that how quickly the shutter is opening or how slowly the shutter is opening and closing. So जितना quickly shutter खुलेगा बंद होगा, उतना कम light जा रही है. So उतना picture डार्कर साइड पे होगी. जितना ज्यादा खुलेगा उतनी ज्यादा लाइट जाएगी एंड उतना पिक्चर हाई एक्सपोज होगी. So ISO, again, ISO is like these are some settings which are generally used for clicking various photographs. 100 is a very standard denomination which we generally use, because I mean, next slide where we talk about this. So as we are increasing the ISO, so 100 ISO is being used for full sun or no shade. We in the recent cameras we have ISO which is lower than 100 also. So then we go up to 200 ISO with loads of sun and partial shade. So these are various ISO settings that we can use. So higher the ISO is used for darker subjects. अगर अंधेरा है तो ISO हम बढ़ाते हैं. But the biggest problem with ISO, increasing the ISO, is कि जैसे जैसे ISO बढ़ता जाता है, पिक्चर नो डाउट ब्राइट होती जाती है, बट पिक्चर्स में नॉइज आनी शुरू होती है या ग्रेन्स आने शुरू होते हैं, which we cover in the next slide, which is right there. So on the left hand side, you can see the picture is grady, but on the right hand side, you can see that the picture is on the sharper side. So on the right hand side, the ISO is lower. On the left hand side, the ISO is higher. So that is how we start getting grains as we go up higher on the ISO. Again, another comparison of ISO. So dental photography equipment, what is the equipment that we require for dental photography is a DSLR. Can be any company, it doesn't make any difference. All companies are good, Nikon is good, Canon is good, Sony is good, all companies are good. So you can have any company DSLR that you are comfortable with. So these are the lenses that we use. So earlier, in my earlier slide, this was a slide, this one, just let me come back to it. Slide gone. My laptop is getting slow, I don't know why. Yeah, this is the slide. So focal length मैंने बात किया था कि जैसे जैसे लेंस का नंबर बढ़ता है वैसे वैसे कन्वर्ज होता जाता है हमारा फोकल एरिया. सो वाइड एंगल स्टार्ट होता है द लोएस्ट नंबर ऑफ लेंस एंड जैसे जैसे लेंस का नंबर इंक्रीज होता जाता है वैसे वैसे फोकल पॉइंट जो है हमारे कन्वर्ज होते जाते हैं. So again, this is something which is again of very great importance to us is the kind of lens that we have to use are very particular. So there's a range of lens that can be used for dental photography, which is from 85 mm to 105 mm. Why is that required is because in documentation, we have to have the exact replica of the natural structure of teeth. So the aspect ratio should be absolutely proper. So if we go on the lower number of lenses, so that means the wide angle lenses, so the photographs start getting distorted. So I think I'll come up with a lens which is wide angle lens. I'll just show you guys. So here's a 1855 mm lens, which is a standard kit lens also. So this is the number is 18 and 55, two numbers. We talk about those two numbers or one number also later. But the two numbers which are present on this lens is 18 and 55. So 18 makes it below 50. So with this lens, we click right from landscapes to portrait. So if we click dental photographs with this, I mean, this is covering a wider range of area. So the aspect ratio of our tooth is going to get spoiled. And same happens with the telephoto lens. This is a telephoto lens which I use for budding and stuff. So this, what does this lens do is, जो दूर का सब्जेक्ट है उसको आपके पास ले आता है, राइट. सो और कन्वर्ज होता जाता है. सो इससे भी हम लोग डेंटल फोटोग्राफी नहीं कर सकते हैं बिकॉज दिस आल्सो डिस्टॉर्ट्स द टूथ रेशियो. एंड so we have to have an optimal number of लेंस का वो नंबर हमको ऑप्टिमल चाहिए जिससे कि हमको एग्जैक्ट रेशियो मिले अपने टूथ स्ट्रक्चर्स का. एंड सेकेंडली वी हैव टू स्टे close to the patient also, not very close to the patient and not too far away. So again, if we are using a lesser number of lens, So we have to get away from the patient. We have to get too close to the patient, I'm sorry. And if we are using a higher number of lens or a telephoto lens, we have to go very far away from the patient. So even we cannot see what exactly we are shooting. So the distance also while shooting patient, the distance has to be optimal so that we can visually also see whatever we are shooting, and exactly same replica can be created on our sensors also. So that is why 85 mm to 105 mm is the ideal lens for dental photography, which is there available in both Canon. It is there available in Nikon. Nikon has 105 from 85 to 105. Canon has 100 mm. So all these lenses are perfectly fine. Third-party lenses also there, which can be also used. 90 mm, 100 mm lenses are there. So these are the kinds of flashes which are specially made for dental photography. On the left-hand side is the ring flash. On the right-hand side is the twin flash. Why these flashes is because, again, when we are taking the intraoral cavity, the light should reach till the back side, right, till the posterior teeth also. So we have to have a very focused light, and we have to have it close to our lenses. So that is why we use these flashes, especially for dental photography. Because if we use other flashes, they don't really converge in. So these are the difference between the results of a twin flash and a ring flash. These are the mirrors and the contrasters which are used for dental photography. Okay, so this is one of the patients that we had done. So this is how we go about. Okay. So let me just come up with this thing. Okay, so probably I'll come up with that slide in some time. So in the meantime, what we can do is enough of jargons of technical things. Let's come down to the ground reality of shooting. So I would rather prefer we have a interactive session. Whatever you want to ask, please feel absolutely free to go ahead and ask me whatever you feel like asking, because I think whatever I've talked about in my slide is I don't know, but it's really hard to understand, at least for me. So I think a better way to go about the entire thing is that we start discussing things. Maybe I can understand what exactly is you guys want, and then we can talk about exactly on the pitch. So I think we can also start taking up a few things, few questions or few discussion points that we have. Hello. आपका आवाज क्रैक कर रहा है, आपका आवाज क्रैक कर रहा है, so if you can.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So there are a few questions. There are a few questions that have been asked by a few viewers. So we'll go one by one. The first question that we have been asked is, what brand do you suggest for postgraduate students in camera, which is cost-effective and good quality one?
Which brand?
Yeah.
Which brand do I suggest? Honestly speaking, this question I've already replied when we started discussing about the dental photography equipment, and when I showed the slide of a Canon and a Nikon. So that is the time when I spoke about the cameras. I said you can buy whatever camera or whatever brand you are comfortable with. And on the cheaper side, we have entry-level cameras in Nikon, we have entry-level cameras in Canon. So both are good for dental photography. There are a few entry-level cameras which do not support third-party lenses or the third-party flashes or that kind of stuff. So the only thing that we need to be a little careful, or you probably need to be a little careful before buying any DSLR, is that you have to have this knowledge about whether or not your camera is supporting third-party lenses or third-party flashes or not. Because if we go in for branded flashes or branded lenses, many times our pockets are little tied up, so we don't prefer going in for branded flashes or branded lenses. So this is where a little bit of a problem crops up. Is like there are a few entry-level cameras which do not support these. So please just make sure before buying any equipment or any camera that they support third-party stuff. That's it.
Thank you so much, sir, for the detailed information. Next question is it okay if we use the flash from the camera itself? Is it compulsory to buy ring flash or the twin flash?
We can use our built-in camera flashes, but the worst problem with the inbuilt flashes is firstly they are of very low power, and unka reach is very limited. So for anteriors, probably you can use them, but as we start going posteriorly, we have to have that kind of concentration of flashes. We have to have that amount of power of light that reaches the posterior of the intraoral cavity. So we have to use these. Probably the twin flash or the ring flash to go ahead and shoot them.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. One more question. Yeah. Sometimes even in the natural daylight, it appears a little dull. So is it like, can we manage that in editing, or should we focus on the exposure triangle itself? Like if someone is not comfortable managing those things, so can we do it in editing? And if yes, then what editing apps can be used?
Modern apps or modern softwares are very, very highly advanced. So whatever goof ups are there during clicking, they can be very well managed in the post processing scenario. I'm sorry, I used post op. It's post processing. So in post processing, yes, you can definitely change quite a few things. But my preference always is like you shoot the best, so that the least amount of processing is required in any photograph. So the better thing is that you get used to your exposure triangle, and the only way to do is practice as much as you can. I remember very clearly one of my friends who was a sort of a mentor also. When I started shooting with him, he made a statement which is still absolutely embossed in my mind, and I still follow that statement like anything. Is that he said, "Ki make sure carry your camera wherever you're going." So this is one thing which I do make it a point that I do carry my camera any and everywhere. So that I keep practicing. That's it. So I think the best way out is you shoot a good picture. Aki to post up, you can do wonders. Editing apps and editing softwares these days are absolutely marvelous.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
I hope. Do you want some names also or something? I'm sorry, I didn't get the full question. Was it that were you wanting some names also of the apps and softwares or what?
Yes, sir. If you can suggest a few names, that would be good.
Okay. So basically, what I can suggest is what I do is I am a Nikon user. So for my post processing, I only use the Nikon camera software, which is available on Nikon Nikon websites, which can be downloaded straight away from the Nikon websites if you're a Nikon user, and you can start your post-processing in that, and that's a free of cost software. I do it in that, and for the rest of the stuff, for making collage or making any other stuff, there are so many softwares, there are so many apps. Up to even on phones, you have Lightroom, you have Snapseed, you have so many apps which have come up. So those are good apps. You have Lightroom, you have Snapseed. I don't know. Like I said, I'm more aware of a DSLR person. So I click on Nikon and I edit on my Nikon software. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much, sir. There is one more question from a PG student. The question is how to ensure that the angulation is correct pre-op and post-op so that we can see the visible difference at the same time. Like sometimes it happens that the angulation is not correct.
Exactly. So for documentation purpose, we have a standard protocol laid down, even by the international standards and even by our Indian standard also. There is a definite protocol that we need to follow. So in that protocol, everything is given there. So the only thing that we have to be really particular about is in quite a few starting में I had covered those 17 views that we need for that protocol. So for most of the views, the first and the foremost thing that needs to be done is that you have to be perpendicular to the subject. And rest of the things they are there in the protocol. So you just need to see those protocols and follow those that are there.
Thank you so much, sir.
बाकी like I said, इससे पहले भी like I said कि one thing that you really require is practice, because till the time you don't practice, these things don't come. Because dental photography is very easy, believe you me, it's very, very easy. And in the meantime, it is very difficult also.
Yes, sir.
Completely up to us, how easy can we make it?
So one personal question I want to ask: how much time does it take per patient? Like you told me that, like you informed that there were 17 views for each patient pre-op and post-op. How much time has increased per patient?
17 plus 70.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How much time does it take?
Yes, sir. Per patient, how much time has increased? Like for all these things.
When I started doing dental photography, it used to take a hell lot of time. It used to take like to capture those 17 views, probably 45 minutes or even up to an hour or so. And that was really, really frustrating. That was very, very frustrating, in fact. So one thing which I did was I caught hold of loads of friends, loads of relatives, and I started practicing on them. So घर पे बैठ के I used to catch hold of any friend of mine, or probably my wife or my daughter or even my mother or my cousins or anyone I could lay my hands on. I used to just पकड़ो them and बैठो यार. I have to click this protocol. So practice is the only thing which decreases time. And now it barely takes not more than I think 15 odd minutes, 15 or maximum 20 odd minutes. Because once you get into the flow, it just keeps on coming naturally. So again, the same thing that you need to practice.
Thank you so much for all the details, sir. One last question that we have been asked by PG students is that Flash helpful in shade selection, like you were telling regarding conveying with the lab person and everything. So is Flash really helpful in shade selection?
Yes, flash is very, very helpful, because if the flash is not there, you are not going to get the image. So flash is very, very important. Another very important factor for shade selection is you have to have the proper white balance. So these are a little bit of technical stuff which just cannot be covered in 1 hour lecture or something of that sort. But you have to be very careful about your white balance. Then for shade selection also, there's a protocol of 3 or 4 photographs that we need to take. Out of which a monochrome is also there. Then we put shades also on the tooth, and then we take the photographs. So there's a protocol for shade selection also. But yes, if you don't have a flash, you don't have a photograph. I mean, the only way to click a photograph without flash is you keep on increasing. Either you keep on increasing the ISO, which gives you grain, you'll be losing on the details, or you decrease the shutter speed to increase the exposure, and that is going to give you shake of the camera. So again, your pictures will get hazy and blurry. So to get crystal clear, sharp pictures, we need to have slightly higher shutter speed. We need to have minimal ISO, and we have to have uh, high f-stop number to give us good depth of field. So all 3 of these, when are combined, we have a very low exposure. So for that, we definitely require a flash.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Doesn't hamper shade selection. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really informative session with you, and we are really obliged to host you with us. So now I'd like to call upon our CEO and founder, Dr. Anmol Bagaria, to conclude the session.
Good evening, everyone who are present here from India and all parts of the globe. I would thank sir for such an informative lecture. As we know, dental photography is really important in this modern era of dentistry, where we are practicing with all the gadgets and all the modernization. So it plays a key role, and the tips and tricks which you have to like explained us today will be really helpful to each and every practitioner who is present over here. Thank you so much, sir. And I'd like to thank the host and the co-host, Dr. Shivam Bhardwaj and Vishal, for hosting the session, and each and every member of my Cynodent team for playing a supportive role in organizing all the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure being here, and it's a lovely experience to be on this platform and speaking with you all. Thanks a lot for having me here. But one thing I would like to say is we were a little short on time because this is a very, very huge topic, and which cannot, we just cannot touch base in 1 hour on this. And especially this is something which should be done hands-on. There are so many things to show, there are so many things to explain. So there are so many things which cannot be just told in these slides. And another time, so next time, Dr. Anmol, I hope we have a longer session so that I can come up with my actual slide presentation. This is a very, very old slide presentation that I had. So for a very small period of time, this is just what I could think of. Because then I had quite a few slides of those wow factors that you have in dental photography. You see so many photographers, dental photographers posting all those wow photographs. So all those things are still kept under the table, which I did not come up with. So next time probably we'll have another session for a longer period of time, so that we can have quite a few things. Because those are the things which I believe makes dental photography interesting. Because honestly, for me, if I'm doing just documentation day in, day out, it's very boring for me. It gets really monotonous for me. So I venture into tabletop photography. I go for a few people. Then I go in for wildlife. I go in for birding. So all those things. So that gives me a kick to come back and get back into my documentation and my clinical work. So for covering all those things, regarding just the dental photography and that wow factors in dental photography or lab communication or the protocols or all those things or the camera settings also. So this was just a very fast run through. And still, thanks for having me here. Thank you so very much, all of you. It's a pleasure being on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
I'm just ending the session.